The rain had been falling for hours, soaking the silent street outside. Eleanor Hayes sat curled on the living room sofa, the glow of the lamp casting soft shadows across the walls. Her husband was working late again, and she had almost convinced herself that the night would pass quietly. Then came the knock. It wasn't a timid tap. It was deliberate, sharp, as though whoever stood outside expected obedience. Eleanor froze, her breath shallow. At this hour no one ever visited. She crept toward the door, every creak of the floorboards echoing in her chest. When she opened it, a man stood in the frame. Rain clung to his hair, dripping from the brim of a dark jacket. A badge glinted against his chest, catching the dim light. "Evening, madam," he said, voice low but practiced. "I'm with the police. There's been an incident nearby. We're asking residents a few quick questions." Eleanor's grip tightened on the door. His eyes didn't search the street like an officer might. They fixed on her, unblinking, as though memorizing her face. Something about the way he smiled, calm, almost rehearsed, sent a chill sliding through her spine. "May I step inside?" "Only a few minutes." She hesitated, every instinct screaming against it. But his uniform, his tone, even the badge, though she hadn't looked closely, suggested authority. Her parents had raised her to trust those who carried it. Against her better judgment, she stepped aside. The man walked in slowly, scanning the room with unsettling ease. He didn't drip water carelessly onto the carpet, nor did he fumble with soaked sleeves like someone caught in the storm. Instead, he seemed composed, too composed for the hour and weather. Eleanor closed the door, her pulse hammering. Something about him was wrong. He glanced at the family photographs on the mantelpiece, the untouched teacup on the table, and then back at her. His smile widened, but his words were oddly casual. "You're home alone tonight, aren't you?" The question sliced through the air like a blade. Eleanor's heart thudded. She realized she had never actually checked the man's badge, and she wasn't sure if she dared to now. Eleanor steadied her breathing, forcing herself to sit across from the man who now occupied her living room, like he belonged there. He asked questions about the neighborhood, who came and went, whether she'd noticed anything unusual, but the way he asked them unsettled her. His gaze lingered too long, not on the door or the windows, but on her hands, her wedding ring, the curve of her shoulders. "You must find it unnerving," he said, tone measured. "Nights like this, waiting for someone to come home. They can feel endless." Her throat tightened. He shouldn't have known her husband wasn't there. She hadn't said it. "How do you know I'm waiting?" she asked, voice trembling despite her attempt at composure. He leaned back, his smile slow, deliberate. "A woman like you doesn't drink tea alone at midnight." Before she could respond, the crunch of tires broke the tension. Headlights swept across the curtains. Her husband Frederick was home. Relief surged through her chest. The stranger's eyes flicked to the window, then back to her, studying her reaction as if it amused him. "Well," he said, standing smoothly, "I won't trouble you further. Stay safe." Without another word, he walked to the door, leaving no trace of urgency, no reminder of the supposed incident. By the time Frederick stepped inside, shaking the rain from his coat, the man was gone. Eleanor tried to explain, but the words tangled. Frederick dismissed it with a weary shake of his head. "You let in some overzealous constable, forget it. You always imagine the worst." Yet something gnawed at her. While clearing the teacup, she noticed a faint metallic glint on the table. Her pulse skipped. It was the badge. She picked it up, hands trembling. The surface was smooth, empty, nothing engraved. Just a blank oval of cold metal. A real badge carried weight and history. This carried only silence. She looked toward the door, dread spreading like ice. Whoever that man was, he had walked straight into her home with nothing but a smile, and she had let him, and Eleanor knew he would return. The blank badge lay heavy in Eleanor's hand long after Frederick had gone upstairs. She waited until morning, her mind restless with images of the man's steady eyes and that unsettling smile. By the time breakfast came, she could no longer hold it in. "Frederick," she said, setting the badge on the table between them, "this isn't real. That man wasn't a policeman. Why did you dismiss me last night as if I were a child?" Frederick barely glanced at it. He folded the newspaper and sighed. "Because you panic at shadows. A stranger knocks and suddenly it's a conspiracy. You're letting your imagination run away with you." Her voice cracked. He knew you weren't home. I never told him. Doesn't that disturb you? His jaw tightened, a flash of irritation cutting across his features. What disturbs me, Eleanor, is this constant suspicion. Do you realize how exhausting it is to come home after working late and be met with hysteria? The word stung. She stood quickly, her chair scraping against the tiled floor. Hysteria? A strange man in our house at midnight and you call me hysterical? What are you hiding from me? The silence that followed was sharper than any scream. Frederick rose, his movements deliberate, and reached for a glass of water. His hands trembled slightly, though he tried to mask it. You're twisting everything, he muttered. Just like you did last month when you accused me of meeting someone after work. Her anger flared. Because you lied about where you were. I saw the messages, Frederick. Don't you dare turn this on me. The glass slipped from his hand and shattered against the floor, shards scattering across the kitchen tiles. He stared at her, eyes cold, as though the man from the night before had left his shadow behind inside him. Eleanor's chest rose and fell rapidly, the echo of glass still ringing in her ears. She realized then that the stranger wasn't the only threat in her home. The danger had been sitting across the table all along. Eleanor left the house the next morning with her nerves raw, the sound of breaking glass still echoing in her mind. She needed distance from Frederick's cold silence, a voice that wasn't laced with dismissal. At a quiet cafe on the high street, she found Margaret Whitlow waiting, an old friend with a keen eye for the undercurrents people tried to hide. Margaret leaned forward, lowering her voice. There's been a man hanging about near your lane. Tall, dark coat, always watching the houses. He fits the description you gave me on the phone. People are whispering he isn't right. Eleanor's stomach nodded. He came into my home last night. Pretending to be a policeman? Margaret's eyes widened, her hand tightening around the cup. Then it must be him. His name's Daniel. Someone at the pub mentioned him. Said he used to know people round here. Though no one talks about him openly. The name landed like a stone in Eleanor's chest. Daniel. It gave shape to the faceless dread that had been pressing on her since the knock at midnight. That evening, she confronted Frederick. He was at the kitchen counter, tie loosened, pouring himself whiskey as though nothing weighed on him. Do you know a man named Daniel? She asked, her voice measured but sharp. The glass stopped midway to his lips. A flicker of fear crossed his eyes before he masked it, too quickly, too perfectly. Where did you hear that? He demanded, his tone defensive, clipped. Eleanor's pulse quickened. So you do know him. He's been watching this house. He came inside, Frederick. Tell me who he is. He set the glass down with more force than necessary, jaw tightening, eyes fixed on her like steel. You're getting yourself tangled in things you don't understand. Leave it alone, Eleanor. But the tremor in his hand betrayed him. She stared, realizing that her husband's fear was not of Daniel's presence, but of what Daniel might reveal, and that truth was now clawing its way to the surface. The days that followed were heavy with silence. Frederick refused to speak of Daniel, burying himself in work and whiskey, while Eleanor felt the walls of the house closing in. Each night she checked the locks twice, yet unease never left her. It was on a rain-slick Thursday evening, while walking home from the grocer's, that she saw him again. Daniel, no uniform this time, no pretense of authority, just a long, dark coat clinging to him, his hair wet, his eyes sharp with quiet amusement. He stepped out from the shadows of an alley, blocking her path. Mrs. Hayes, he greeted softly as if they were long acquainted. Her grip tightened on the shopping bag. Stay away from me. Daniel tilted his head, the corner of his mouth curving into that same unnerving smile. I only want to talk. You've been asking questions about me. It's only fair I ask some in return. His voice was calm, deliberate as he leaned closer. Does your husband still come home late every night? Does he tell you where he really goes? Eleanor's breath caught. The words struck too precisely, as though he had walked through her arguments, her suspicions, her sleepless doubts. You know him, she whispered. Daniel's eyes glimmered in the half-light. Better than you think. Better than you ever will. The sound of distant thunder rolled through the alley, but Eleanor barely noticed. Her pulse hammered as Daniel stepped back, leaving just enough space for her to pass. "You'll find the truth soon," he said, voice almost tender. "But it won't come from him. It never does." She hurried away, clutching the bag to her chest, but his words followed her like a shadow. By the time she reached her front door, her hands were trembling so violently she could barely fit the key into the lock. Inside, the house was silent, yet Frederick's jacket still hung by the door. He hadn't gone out. He had lied again. Eleanor realized Daniel wasn't merely haunting her marriage. He was dismantling it piece by piece, and Frederick's silence was starting to look like guilt. That night, Eleanor could not rest. Daniel's words echoed in her mind, circling like vultures around a truth she had yet to face. She waited until Frederick's breathing steadied upstairs before slipping quietly into the study, a room he always kept locked, but had forgotten in his drunkenness to secure. The air smelled faintly of old tobacco and damp paper. She opened the desk drawers with trembling hands, rifling past bills and ledgers, until her fingers caught on an envelope wedged at the back. Inside were letters, their ink blurred by time, each one addressed to a woman named Isabel. The handwriting was Frederick's. Eleanor read in silence, her stomach twisting. The letters spoke of desire, promises of escape, confessions of nights that could never be mentioned. And then came the last line in one of them. "I cannot undo what happened that night. Daniel will never forgive me." Her pulse surged. She pulled out a bundle of photographs torn at the edges. Some showed Frederick in his 20s, arm around a woman whose face was partly ripped away. Others showed the three of them together, Frederick, the woman, and Daniel, their friendship frozen in happier days. Beneath the photographs lay a police report. Eleanor's vision blurred as she scanned it. A bar fight escalating into violence. A man hospitalized, witnesses claiming Frederick had struck first, though charges had mysteriously vanished. The pages trembled in her grip. Her husband, the man she shared her life with, had buried sins deep enough to rot their marriage from within. And Daniel, the shadow at their door, had been part of it all. Eleanor's throat tightened. If Frederick had lied about his past, what else had he concealed? She stuffed the letters back, her heart pounding. But as she closed the drawer, she heard movement upstairs. Heavy footsteps, slower than sleep should allow. Frederick's voice drifted down, low and sharp. "Eleanor, what are you doing?" She froze, her hand still on the drawer handle. And for the first time, she feared not the stranger outside her home, but the man standing above it. Eleanor's hand slipped from the drawer as Frederick's shadow stretched across the stairwell. He descended slowly, each step deliberate, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "What exactly were you hoping to find?" he asked, voice calm yet threaded with menace. Her chest tightened. "Letters, photographs, reports. You lied to me, Frederick." "About Daniel." "About everything." He crossed the room, lifted the torn photograph she had dropped, and studied it with unnerving ease. "You don't understand what you've seen. Daniel has poisoned your thoughts. He always knew how to manipulate. He thrives on twisting the truth." Eleanor's hand shook. "I don't need Daniel to tell me you had an affair. That you hurt someone. I saw it in your words." Frederick's laugh was soft, almost pitying. "You've always misread things. You create stories where none exist. Do you remember last winter, when you accused me of hiding messages on my phone, only to find they were from a client? You embarrassed yourself then. You're doing it again now." Her face flushed, anger warring with doubt. Had she overstepped? Was she misremembering? The room seemed to close in, his voice the only tether pulling her deeper into uncertainty. "You let a stranger inside at midnight," he continued, tone sharpening. "A man you barely knew. And now you're siding with him over your own husband. What does that say about you, Eleanor?" She stared at him, heart pounding, words caught in her throat. His presence loomed, not with physical threat, but with the suffocating weight of control. The walls of the study seemed to bend under it. Later, she found herself in the bathroom, staring into the cracked mirror above the sink. Her reflection was pale, fractured by the split in the glass, as though she were breaking apart piece by piece. Behind her, the door creaked, Frederick's silhouette filling the frame. "You'll drive yourself mad if you keep chasing ghosts," he murmured. Eleanor gripped the sink until her knuckles whitened, terrified that perhaps he was right, but the memory of Daniel's words refused to let her go. Eleanor walked quickly through the narrow lane behind the church, her coat pulled tight against the night air. She had left the house under the pretense of needing air, but in truth she was suffocating inside those walls. Each word Frederick spoke rattled inside her skull, twisting, undoing her certainty. She wasn't alone for long. A flick of a lighter broke the silence, followed by the faint glow of a cigarette. Daniel stepped from the shadows, his face half lit, smoke curling lazily between them. "You shouldn't be out here," she whispered, though her voice carried more need than warning. He gave a dry smile. "And yet here you are." He took a slow drag before letting the smoke drift upward. "Your husband tells you I'm dangerous, doesn't he?" "That I twist the truth," her throat tightened. "He says you ruined everything, that you've always been poison." Daniel's expression shifted, the amusement fading. "Frederick and I were closer than brothers once. We trusted each other with everything, until one night he chose himself over everyone else. He ruined Isabel, he ruined me, and he ruined the man who ended up in hospital because of him." The name Isabel cut into Eleanor like a blade. She had seen it in the letters, a ghost now spoken aloud. Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Do you know what it feels like to watch a man bury his sins while you carry the weight of them? He stole years from me, Eleanor. He destroyed lives and walked away smiling, and now you live with him as though he is worth loving." Her pulse hammered, her body torn between belief and denial. "What do you want from me?" she asked, barely audible. "The truth," Daniel replied, flicking the cigarette to the ground, embers scattering like sparks in the dark. "And when you see it clearly, you'll never look at him the same again." Eleanor stood frozen under the streetlight, her heart pounding as the shadow of choice pressed in on her. Because if Daniel was right, then her marriage had been built on a lie from the very beginning. Eleanor returned home with Daniel's words lodged deep in her chest. The house smelled faintly of whiskey and damp wool, Frederick's coat slung carelessly over the chair. He looked up from the armchair when she entered, eyes narrowed, as though he could sense the truth she now carried. She stood in the center of the room, fists clenched. "Who is Isabel, Frederick?" His face drained of color. For a long moment he said nothing. Then with a sharp exhale he rose and paced the floor. "Daniel told you. Answer me," she snapped, her voice shaking with fury. "What happened to her? What happened that night?" Frederick's shoulders slumped. He pressed his palms to his face, dragging them down slowly before meeting her gaze. "It wasn't meant to spiral. We were young, reckless. I thought I could protect her, protect all of us. But it went wrong. A fight broke out. I pretended to be a policeman to scare people off, to make it end." Eleanor's stomach turned. "You wore a uniform? You lied your way through violence." He nodded, his voice breaking. "And it worked." The crowd scattered, but one man was left broken. "Daniel never forgave me. Isabel never recovered from what came after. I thought if I buried it, it would stay buried." Tears streaked his face, but they did nothing to soften the horror pressing against her ribs. He sank to his knees before her, desperate hands reaching out. "I wanted a new life with you. I wanted to be free of it. Can't you see? Daniel is dragging us both back into the grave I tried to leave behind." Eleanor stumbled back, her mind reeling. The image of the blank badge seared itself into her thoughts, no longer a symbol of safety, but of the night her husband had chosen deceit over truth. Frederick's sobs filled the room, but Eleanor heard only Daniel's voice echoing in her memory. He ruined lives and walked away smiling. And now she realized the man she had trusted most was nothing more than a liar, bound to another man's vengeance. The house was silent when the knock came, not sharp, not urgent, but deliberate. Eleanor opened the door to find Daniel waiting, his collar turned up against the rain. He stepped inside without asking, his presence soaking the room in dread. Frederick lingered behind her, pale, eyes rimmed red from his confession. Daniel's smile was faint, almost kind. "So he finally told you?" Eleanor's voice caught. "He admitted enough." Daniel's gaze flicked to Frederick. "Enough. To damn him? Or enough to make you doubt yourself forever?" Frederick lurched forward. "She doesn't need this. It's between you and me." But Daniel's eyes never left Eleanor. "No, it's hers now. She carries the truth. The question is, what will she do with it?" The room tightened around her, the air pressing like iron against her lungs. Daniel leaned closer, his words a whisper. Expose him and destroy your marriage. Protect him and live with the weight of every lie he fed you. Either way, you lose. Frederick dropped to the floor again, hands grasping at her skirt. Eleanor, please. I love you. It was a mistake years ago. Don't let him twist it into something more. Her chest heaved as she looked between them, one begging, the other demanding. She wanted to scream, to tear the walls down, to find air that wasn't poisoned by betrayal. But no sound came. Daniel straightened, eyes glinting with victory. Your silence will be his prison. And yours. He left as quietly as he had arrived, the door shutting with a soft click that echoed like thunder in her skull. Eleanor stood, frozen, staring at the empty chair at the dining table, its presence heavier than either man's. The single light above flickered, throwing shadows across the room like fractured memories. Her lips parted, but no words followed. Only silence. A silence that swallowed the truth whole, leaving her with a wound that would never close. The reality was darker than she had ever dared to imagine.